Hey everybody, this is Custom Cez for Roma Custom Bike, and we are here at Rettifica Micheli to do all the jobs we need to do on the engine so that it can come back to be just like new. Siamo qui con Marco Micheli di Micheli Rettifiche, che si occuperà di rimettere in sesto il motore della mia vecchia signora.
Sono circa personalmente 30 anni che faccio questo lavoro e la ditta è viva, diciamo, dal 1954. Sì, ci metteremo all'opera sulla tua signora, sui vari pezzi della tua moto, interverremo sulle testate ovviamente.
Certo.
E interveremo anche sui tuoi cilindri, dopo averli chiaramente sabbiati e pallinati, per effettuare una rettifica e seguiranno poi 2 fasi di lappatura cilindro per dare la superficie finale, quindi verrà prima lucidata sotto un macchinario e poi ripassata sotto un'altra levigatrice orizzontale della Sannen.
Quindi un lavoro che vale la pena fare e speriamo poi di rifarlo tra altri 30 anni.
Dopo che è passata da noi almeno altri 35 anni.
Assolutamente.
We begin by reconditioning the valve seats. Angelo, that by now can do this job with his eyes closed, positions the head in the workbench. As you can see, he can adjust the positioning of the part in such a way to be sure that the tool will be perpendicularly aligned with the seat plane. Once he has verified that the cutter, the seat and the valve guide hole are perfectly aligned, he can start the machining. The cutter will remove a very minute amount of material, flattening all those mold deformations that occur after years of thermal excursion. This airline opening, added to the one present on the valves, end up compromising the seal in the combustion chamber, with the resulting loss of power. The reconditioning of the seats and the valves remove these deformations, bringing back the combustion chamber to its ideal condition. It is up to Angelo and his extensive experience to decide when it's time to stop, getting the best results while removing the absolute minimum amount of material. Once the process is done, the seal between the valve and the seat is checked with a vacuum pump and a manometer to make sure that there is no loss of pressure in the assembly.
Faccio questo lavoro dal 2003 e non so, mi piace, sono sempre stato nell'ambito della meccanica, modificavo tutto, avevo il SIA, avevo il booster, avevo una moto, sempre con le mani zozze dalla mattina alla sera e niente, adesso se volete andiamo a vedere l'evolversi delle cose.
Another place where these deformations can cause loss of power is between the head and the cylinder. Although gaskets are installed with the sole purpose of sealing up the chamber to prevent and contrast these consequences of thermal excursion, this remains a weak spot for many engines, especially Harley ones. This machine is designed to level the plane of the head and, just like for the valves, restore the seal between the head and the cylinder. Now it's the cylinder's turn to get reconditioned. The upper and bottom plates are installed and tightened up at manual specified torque to simulate the pressure and deformation the cylinder is subjected to once it's tied down between the head and the crankcase. This way the machining will be done in the same conditions as when the cylinder is installed. Once prepping is done, Emiliano installs the cylinder in the boring machine and proceeds with attaching the rod and the cutter. This dial indicates when the cutter position is dead center in relation to the cylinder hole. In this case, we're removing 0.010 inch of material from the sides, just like specified on the new pistons I purchased. After the boring process is done, Emiliano proceeds with the honing using this automated machine that will bring the hole to its final dimension. The river of oil we see spewing from the hose is used for cooling and lubrication, as well as to remove the bits of material coming off the cylinder walls. Here, he's verifying the dimension of the final hole. Now Emiliano is going to give a final pass with this Sun machine. This last process will create some minuscule grooves in a cross pattern in the cylinder walls, allowing for the oil to stick to the walls during operation and giving a better lubrication to the engine by reducing the friction between the piston and the cylinder. As you can see, this process is done by hand, and here is where the experience of the operator come again into play to produce the best possible results. Just another reason not to do this at home.
So, all jobs are done. As you can see, we can kick some ass in Rome as well. Now we're gonna go to my shop, powder coat this engine, and try install it back onto the bike. We're now back in my home shop. Last weekend, I've powder coated the heads and the cylinders. I started by coating the valve seats with a little bit of grease to protect them from humidity and rust. I've had also to mask all the holes and all the parts where I did not want the paint to go with some high temperature Scotch tape before installing them into a jig that would allow me to handle the parts without having to touch them. For this, I used a bunch of threaded rods cut to size, some spacer and an aluminum plate I had left over from another project. Then the parts went into the spray booth and in the oven. In this particular occasion, both heating and cooling down were gradual to avoid thermal shock and eventually deforming again the parts and making the reconditioning useless. I'd actually suggest to you guys to go with the painting first and the reconditioning last. The spraying was a bit problematic as well because the Faraday effect was very strong in between the fins. To fix it, I had to continuously switch the power between 0 and 100,000 volts on the gun to minimize the effect. I finally spent something like 8 hours with a hand file removing the paint from each of the fins, being very careful not to ruin the rest of the paint job. It does look great, but I don't know if I would do it again. It was a really tedious job. So we went from this to this right here. It's really beautiful with my new pistons and everything. So, this is it for this episode of Roma Custom Bike, and as always, I invite you to leave a comment, press the like button, and why not, if you liked it, tell your friends. This is Custom Cez, and I'll see you next time.